Let's look at chapter 5.3.7, and we now move to this idea of the multiplication rule and looking at events when they're independent or dependent kind of affects the outcomes of probability. So this first question, looking at the online homework problem number 4, there are 3 questions here we can talk through real quick. Is we're first trying to decide if these 2 events are independent or dependent, and so we just got to quickly go back to that definition of independent. So now we're looking at this idea we have 2 events, and 2 events are independent. We say if the occurrence of one of the events in a probability does not affect the probability of another event. So the likelihood of one event happening somehow is not connected to the likelihood or the occurrence of another event. Right? One does not influence the other in some way, so we would say they're independent. Otherwise, we'd say they're dependent when the occurrence of one event affects the probability of another one. Okay, so we'll look at some specific examples of that. And so in this case, a person living at least 70 years old, is that independent or dependent to the same person regularly handling venomous snakes? Now, the event of handling venomous snakes does influence your probability of living at least 70 years. You have a chance of dying more likely than other people if you're handling venomous snakes. So we would say these are dependent, right? These are dependent events here. So keep that in mind with that one here. So this is dependent, right? The occurrence of one affects the probability of the other. Randomly selected person having a high GPA, a different randomly selected person having a low GPA. So the event of selecting someone with a high GPA does not influence, right? Picking someone out of 2 people, picking somebody with a high GPA does not affect in any way the probability of selecting someone with a low GPA. So we would say these are independent events. You selecting 2 separate people has no connection with each other. So the event of one does not affect the likelihood of the second event happening or the probability. And on this one here, consumer demand for synthetic diamonds and the amount of research funding for diamond synthesis. We would say these are dependent events because if people are interested in synthetic diamonds, that would influence and have an effect on the amount of research funding for diamond synthesis. And so it's almost like an independent variables. This is the idea. We're just saying now these variables are dependent, right? There's some connection back to like chapter 4 relationship there.